22 October 2020, and we are here live on JCTV Zimbabwe, simulcast on Gambakwe Media Facebook and Gambakwe Media YouTube channel. And today we are talking about the issue of sanctions. Sanctions. This has been a word that has become familiar with the Zimbabweans, the economic sanctions, the ZANU sanctions, and they've been caused a number of years for those sanctions to be removed. And a lot of people have, commented that the sanctions are hurting the ordinary Zimbabweans. So today, we want to look at what is happening with the call for the removal of sanctions. Is this something that that is going to yield results at all? So these are the questions that we are going to be talking about today. And today, I'm joined by three guests. One of the familiar guests that you know, Mr. Pardon Gambakwe from Gambakwe Media. Welcome, sir.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Yeah. And I'm also joined by Mr. Tongai Pangura. He's also part of our panelists. Mr. Tongai, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I am also joined by Mr. Brian Wawombe, who is part of the organizing team for this event that is taking place on the 25th of October in Pretoria. And they will be singing the song of "We Want Sanctions to be Removed so that Zimbabwe can move forward." So I want to delve into that. Mr. Brian, can you take us through what is the purpose of this march and what is your objective?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Rusike and your viewers. This year, I think the purpose for this march is very simple. What we are saying is that as Zimbabweans, as ordinary helpless citizens of Zimbabwe, we are saying we have been lied to for a very long time by the Americans. It's almost 2 decades now when the sanctions were imposed on Zimbabwe. And when these sanctions were first imposed on our country, we were told that these sanctions are targeted sanctions. And when they were saying that these sanctions are targeted sanctions, they were saying they are actually targeted at our senior government leaders. But for the past 19 years or so, almost 20 years now, these sanctions have not affected our leaders. But these sanctions have actually affected us as the general populace. And between me and you, you understand that for the past 19 years, we've been told that these sanctions are imposed. At first, it was said that they were imposed on Robert Mugabe as our leader. But under sanctions, Robert Mugabe managed to build a blue roof. But you and I, we did not do anything for the past 19 years. So our argument is that these sanctions for the past 20 years, they were not, in fact, as they're saying that they were targeted, they've actually missed their target. They've long missed their target, and they've actually targeted us. And for the American administrators to continuously maintain these sanctions when they've missed their target and they've targeted us, the ordinary citizens, it automatically tells us that these sanctions were actually targeted at us from the first place. So at the moment, we are saying as the general populace or ordinary citizens, what our argument is very simple, is that these sanctions, if they do not have effect as the Americans report, why are they maintaining them? Why are they maintaining them if they've got no effect on our country? If they've got no effect on the helpless citizens, why are they maintaining them? So at the moment, our argument is very simple. At the same time, what you need to understand is that we have realized that the only way these sanctions can be removed is when the ordinary or the general populace of the Zimbabwean citizens, the cry that comes from the helpless citizens, when it reaches the high decibels, that's when they can be able to remove them. Because this is the greatest human rights violations against the Zimbabweans, which have been demonstrated by the American administrators.
So one might ask, are we, in the meantime, want to welcome Mr. Kennedy Mandaza. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy Mandaza is the ZANU PF spokesperson for South Africa and is joining us once again. He's regular on this platform. So, as you are saying that this has hurt the Zimbabwean people, but my question to you that I would pose to you is that what makes you think that, like we have seen in the past years, that the cause for the arrest or the targeted sanctions or arrests that have been done to African leaders at the ICC, African leaders have been calling for the boycotting of the ICC because they felt that it is targeting African leaders instead of European leaders who are involved in many wars and genocides or war crimes against humanity. But this has fallen on deaf ears. What makes you think that if people, even if they are going to cry in their numbers, what makes you think that the American leaders who have imposed sanctions on Zimbabwe, they are going to listen to you now?
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Okay, thank you very much, sir. Although you were breaking, but anyway, I think I've heard your question. What I think is that, you know, when a child that does not cry would die actually at the back of the mother. So at the moment, the way we need to do is that we cannot keep quiet when somebody is stepping on our toes. So what we need to do is to make sure that we have the unit of purpose as Zimbabweans, regardless of your political affiliation, regardless of your religious convictions. This is the time that we need to unite as Zimbabweans, because at the moment, whether you are MDC or ZANU PF, these sanctions are hurting all of us in the society. It does not, they do not actually select that if you're a ZANU PF member or MDC member, you are not going to be affected by these sanctions. This is a collective punishment on the entire 17 million people in Zimbabwe. So we are saying, as the Zimbabwean citizens, we need to rise up against these sanctions, because this is actually the fourth Chimurenga. It is a war which was declared against the Zimbabwean citizens. And in my own view, I see that as you have asked that if we cry, what makes you think that they are going to hear us? If we cry for the good cause, because these sanctions are illegal in the first place. They were imposed on Zimbabwe illegally. The only sole board that has got the right to impose sanctions on a sovereign country, it is the United Nations. So if there is a conflict or a dispute between two sovereign nations or member states of the United Nations, they are supposed to go before the United Nations. Then the United Nations is supposed to be the arbiter of that case. So in this case, these sanctions are actually legal. And at the same time, these sanctions are actually the highest human rights violations in the history of human rights. Because right now, these sanctions have actually deprived Zimbabweans of the good healthcare system. They've deprived Zimbabweans of the good education. They've deprived Zimbabweans access to clean water. So in my own view, it is now, it has reached a time where the government of Zimbabwe has to actually open a case at the International Court of Justice against the Americans, because they violated the human rights of the Zimbabweans. That's my take.
All right, it's getting heated up here. Mr. Mandaza, I want to bring you on this one. You have continuously called for the removal of sanctions, and you have stated a number of reasons. I wanted to ask, this is the second year. I remember last year I was there in Pretoria when the march was there, and it happened. My question is, that I've posed quite a number of times, is that is the problem that we are facing in Zimbabwe, is it an issue of corruption or sanctions? Because we keep on hearing sanctions, but we are not seeing much action on the side of corruption. What is your take on the issue of corruption versus the issue of sanctions in Zimbabwe?
Thank you so much for inviting me once again to your program. Let me start by looking at the issue of the sanctions. I think it must be understood in the context that the Americans want to maintain their stranglehold on global economic affairs by ensuring that the land reform and the economic empowerment programs that Zimbabwe has taken do not succeed, because they are fully aware that the success of the land reform and the economic empowerment programs that they've instituted in the country, if they were to go on and succeed, then fellow Africans in the region will follow suit and ensure that they have total control of the resources on our African countries. So in one way or the other, the Americans are trying to frustrate the efforts that the Zimbabwean government are trying to put in place to ensure that the African owner of the means of production and the resources on Africa are retained in the hands of the African. Because if this were to happen, South Africa is going to move fast to make sure that land is taken from the few individuals that own large expanse of land. The same applies to Namibia, the same applies to all other African countries in the region. So to scare them away, America and the EU will not easily release or remove the sanctions. They would want to maintain them so much that others do not follow the route that Zimbabwe have undertaken. But let me now delve on the issue of corruption. Yes, we do not condone corruption in any way. Even the president, including today when he spoke in parliament, he condemned the corruption. He indicated that corruption must be dealt with decisively. So in no way is the government of Zimbabwe, under the presidency of Comrade Emerson Mnangagwa, continue to allow the big and small fish to enjoy whilst others are wallowing in poverty. There are so many steps that the government has so far taken to make sure that they keep corruption in the country. And we have seen this in the recent past, a number of people that have been brought into courts. They are moving into municipalities where corruption has been very rampant. They are moving into the land barons to make sure that we do not have people siphoning money from the people. So there is so much that is happening in terms of making sure that corruption is nipped in the bud in the country. But it is the responsibility of the Americans who illegally imposed the sanctions on Zimbabwe to make sure that they lift them so that they can give Zimbabweans the opportunity to determine their future using their resources, which we have started to mobilize to make sure that we can take care of the people of Zimbabwe using locally mobilized resources. So the issue of corruption, we are attending to that, but the Americans and their allies should remove the sanctions unconditionally, because one, they are illegal, they are a declaration of war, they are a serious violation of human rights, whereas as they claim that they imposed those sanctions because of human rights abuses in Zimbabwe. You can't therefore correct human rights abuses by also going by allowing human rights abuses through the imposition of sanctions. One wrong does not correct another wrong. America should remove these sanctions because they have outlived their usefulness. They have not served the intended purpose for which they claim they were supposed to serve, because they are hitting deeper and on the general populace. Look at what has happened. The earnings of the majority of people in Zimbabwe has been eroded. Hospitals have been reduced to death traps. Fuel stations normally run dry. Shops at some point were empty. We had an unprecedented hyperinflation situation between 2007 and 2008. All this as a result of illegal sanctions which were imposed on Zimbabwe in order to ensure they scare away Zimbabweans from addressing the land question, for which many of our people died. And also, they went to war for these human rights issues that they now claim they would want to teach us. It was the reason why many people went to war, to address the human rights abuses that were being perpetrated among the Zimbabweans by the former colonizers. The issue of sanctions, we are calling upon all progressive forces to join hands with us and call the Americans and their allies to remove them unconditionally.
All right. Mr. Pardon Gabakwe, you wanted to ask something. You can go ahead.
Okay, I think most people would want to know about the rally or the march, which is going to be happening on the 25th of October. So I think we need to spend a bit more time. I've heard what Mr. Mandaza said about the removal of sanctions, and I think maybe we can have further discussion on that after people get more understanding of the march. We saw the posters that you put out, the ANC and ZANU PF, what is happening and who is going to be leading the rally.
Okay, thank you, Gambakwe. It's not necessarily that it's ZANU PF or ANC that are going to lead the rally. The rally is going to be, the march actually is going to be led by the ordinary citizens, the Zimbabwean citizens. Zimbabwean citizens are the ones that are going to be leading the march. It's not ZANU PF, it's not ANC. We invited all the political parties, including those even in the MDC. We have invited everyone to this march because this is a Zimbabwean warfare. It's not a ZANU PF warfare or MDC warfare. So on the 25th of March, we are saying as Zimbabweans in solidarity with the entire SADC region and also the entire African continent, we are having a solidarity march which will start from the Loftus Stadium to the US Embassy, and it will be on a Sunday. So now the thing that we need to also understand about this, as I've said before, is that we need to raise awareness within our society, how these sanctions actually affect the day-to-day lives of people, of ordinary citizens. So at this time around, what I want you to know and to understand is that Americans have been used the different tactics to make sure that they hide the real issue which is affecting Zimbabwe at the moment. So if you look at the political gimmick that the Americans have been using all along, and which was that of targeted sanctions, they are seeing that this political gimmick is now running out of steam, and the Zimbabweans are beginning to realize that these sanctions are not targeted at our leaders, but they are targeted at us, the general populace. Now they're coming up with, they are now peddling falsehoods and this propaganda of saying that it is now corruption, it is misgovernance, it is incompetence, which is actually destroying the Zimbabwean economy. But Gambakwe, if I can ask you, if we look at the history of nations, the history of governments for the past 100 years, which country has collapsed because of misgovernance? Which country has collapsed because of corruption? Which country has collapsed because of incompetence? All these things are not real issues. The real issues for the past 100 years, which have collapsed governments, which have collapsed nations, are sanctions. Sanctions are a sophisticated weapon of mass destruction, and it's a very complicated thing. So Americans, they like them because people, they don't understand them. And some of the American political thinkers, they actually brag about this soft power that the Americans use to actually intimidate their opponents, to control their opponents. So if you look at actually what happens in global politics or in international relations, you realize that what these Americans are doing, this fig leaf tactic, which they always do. And today I've just seen a video of the American ambassador saying that this Zimbabwean economy is failing because of incompetence, misgovernance, and corruption. That, to me, is a bluff. That which we need to unpack the mysteries that are behind the sophisticated weapon of mass destruction. And if I can ask you, Gambakwe, if you look at people like the Iranians, with the highest level of education that they have, they've got more PhDs per capita more than the Americans. They've failed to understand how these American sanctions function. How do you think a Zimbabwean with just an ordinary level would be able to understand this sophisticated and complicated weapon of mass destruction? You know, it's an impossible thing. So what we need to do is to create awareness within our society, and also at the same time, we are urging our Minister of Education that 20 years now down the line, our Minister of Education must incorporate in our syllabus at school, because of the discord which is actually our society today. Our young men and young women, they do not understand what sanctions are. So at the moment, sanctions are actually imposed on a nation to hate an economy, to hate the people, so that they can be able to achieve whatever the people that have imposed those sanctions, they can be able to achieve their intended outcome. So at this point in time, you realize that on Zimbabwe, they've imposed these sanctions. And when you look at them, the majority of Zimbabweans do not understand them. And their main purpose is to bring confusion within the society. And when I hear you saying it is corruption, it is incompetence, it is misgovernance, that is actually destroying the Zimbabwean economy, that is actually the goal of sanctions, to actually mislead people from the real goal, from the real point, from the real issue, which is actually destroying the economy of the nation.
Okay,
right.
So I think, Mr. Arusike, I wanted to just make a follow-up question. You are going to be marching from Loftus Stadium to the United States Embassy here in South Africa, and who is going to receive your petition? Is there permission obtained already for the march?
Thank you, Gambakwe. That one is not a problem. I think in the 21st century, the fact that it's on a Sunday or a holiday does not become a barrier or an impediment. We will email them the memorandum. So that one is covered. We are going to email them the memorandum when we are there at the United States Embassy. We email them the memorandum, and we'll give our solidarity speeches.
Okay, and the South African government, normally they block marches to embassies. You saw what happened last month. They didn't allow people to march to the Zimbabwean embassy. Are they going to allow you to march to the American embassy?
Yes, we have got the permit already. We have got the permit to march to the United States embassy. We got the permit yesterday, and that one is actually covered, that angle. So everyone will be safe. And we have got the permit that allows us to march, and they will be having the security from the South African government.
Okay, and then my final follow-up question is for Mr. Mandaza. Mr. Mandaza, is ZANU PF in South Africa? Are you in support of the march by Zimbabweans here in South Africa? What is your part in the march?
As ZANU PF in South Africa, we are 150%, if not more, in support of this particular march, which is going to take place on the 25th of October. And we are rallying our own members to make sure that they take part in this particular march. We have also reached out to our counterparts in the Revolutionary Party, the African National Congress, to make sure that they avail their membership in numbers to support this cause, which we think is not a Zimbabwean cause. It is an African cause. It is a SADC region cause, because the plight of the Zimbabweans in Zimbabwe and outside Zimbabwe is hurting also the host countries who have accepted the Zimbabweans to be resident in their countries. Therefore, it is important to understand that the problems that are facing Zimbabweans at the moment, they are not localized only in Zimbabwe. They are in South Africa, they are in Lesotho, they are in Mozambique, and in other countries in the region. Therefore, it is important that our brothers and sisters in the liberation movement, the ANC, they are part of this, and we are also rallying other progressive forces that are sympathetic to the cause that we have been advancing for many years to be part of this particular initiative, which I think the Zimbabweans in their diversity should all be coming to make a clarion call, an unequivocal and unambiguous call to the Americans to say that sanctions are hitting the generality of the people, not only in Zimbabwe, but in the region.
Okay, I think, Mr. Rusike, my questions are answered. And as a way of summary, the 25th of October, there's going to be a march from Loftus Stadium to the US Embassy here in South Africa, and it is to demand the removal of sanctions. And according to Mr. Brian Vahombe, the petition is going to be emailed to the United States Embassy, and already the permit has been obtained. I saw the posters, and I've posted those posters on gambakwe.com, and Mr. Rusike has displayed some of those posters. Who is invited? What time do people gather? And what are the logistics?
Okay, what we have done, we have invited everyone who wants to actually show solidarity with Zimbabweans. All Africans are invited. And this march, I think it shows that it will start, people will start gathering. It will start the march at around about 9, and it's going to end at around about 12. So we've invited every Zimbabwean, regardless of your political affiliation, because this issue is a Zimbabwean issue. It's not a ZANU PF issue or our political or a Zimbabwean government issue. It's our issue as the Zimbabwean citizens, because we are the ones that are the most affected. So we have invited everyone, all the political parties, all the Zimbabwean citizens, and also even in South Africa, we've also invited all the political parties, including the ANC. So I think the other thing that I wanted to say maybe before we close is that Gambakwe, people must understand that these sanctions, they operate like witchcraft. You know, witchcraft, you might not be able to see that you have been bewitched, but you can see the effects of the charm which have been placed against you. So you might not see the charm, but you can see the effects of the charm. So that's how sanctions are actually crafted. It's a kind of witchcraft. It's a witchcraft against humanity. That's what they are.
All right, all
Okay,
right.
back to you, Mr. Rusike. I've got a few more questions later, but I think I should give you back your show. I've taken over.
Okay. No, we are continuing with Mr. Gambakwe and everyone. We have allowed everyone else to speak, but we have Mr. Chipangura here. He is actually of a different view with others, and we want to hear from him. Mr. Chipangura, you said that you are not going to participate in this match. What are your reasons?
Thank you, Mr. Rusike. Thank you, everybody. I don't think there is any reason in participating in something that you know you are not going to get the outcome that you desire. First of all, let's talk about sanctions. By definition, what are sanctions to the people of Zimbabwe? Sanctions are restrictive measures or tools used by one another country to another who are already in a relationship, so as to pressure another country or another to make reforms on certain areas, or to make another to change his or her behavior. So Zimbabwe is not as a country is not under sanction from United States of America, from EU, or from the Western countries. That one is a perfect fact, and we cannot deny it. Zimbabwe as a country is not under sanction. Only certain individuals and certain companies, 56 countries and 86 individuals. The latest individual who was placed on the sanction by United States is Tagwire. So, Mr. Mandaza and Mr. Vahombe, I want to ask you a question, and I want a clean and a correct answer. Owen Ngube, the Minister of State Security, and Tagwire are the latest people to be targeted by this sanction. So I want you to explain in detail the people of Zimbabwe. What is the link between the sanctions which were placed on Owen Ngube and Tagwire to the suffering and the poverty of the whole nation of Zimbabwe? If you can able to link me the sanctions placed on these two individuals, I just mentioned these two individuals because they are the latest to be placed under sanctions. So if you tell me and the other Zimbabweans to go and march so that the sanctions on Mr. Ngube are removed, what is it to me? And if a mere march is going to remove the sanctions, which you are saying are given on the people of Zimbabwe by the Western countries, if a mere march, why does it took you as a government organized this in 2004? Why does it took you 20 years, a decade? 20 years, it's 2 decades. Why does it took you 20 years to organize a mere gala, a mere march, so that the sanction can be removed? Another thing.
Okay. Can you allow Mr. Mandaza to respond so that you can bring in another question? Mr. Mandaza,
I sympathize with Mr. Chipangura because I think he needs the kind of education that Mr. Vahombe spoke about, because this is not the first time that the issue of sanctions has been spoken about. If you remember, there was a time when there were anti-sanctions forms that people were supposed to fill, a petition, and it had nothing to do with the SADC region. And even here in South Africa, we had an opportunity in 2010 to have that petition or forms that people had to sign. But more importantly, it's quite disappointing to hear that there are Zimbabweans that think there are no sanctions. One of the former deputy prime ministers of Zimbabwe, Professor Tambara, one of the meetings that he had, I can't remember whether it was at the World Economic Forum, he made it very clear, abundantly very clear in his address, that can the United States of America remove sanctions that were imposed to make sure that we remove ZANU PF. Now that we have the levers of power, why should we make that when we wanted them to be removed? If somebody who knew very well how sanctions had been brought into Zimbabwe was calling for them to be removed, one wonders, therefore, why people continue to say that there are no sanctions that are on Zimbabwe. Chester Croker, one of the United States Assistant Secretary, also spoke about the sanctions and said, in order for people to be distanced from ZANU PF, we must make sure that the economy screams. These are issues that have been said. And for people then to deny that there are no sanctions, and as late as a few days ago, one of the assistant secretaries was also talking about these sanctions that they need to be maintained in order that there are reforms. Who calls for reforms in another country? Is it the people of that particular country or some people from somewhere like in America? If reforms are supposed to be done in Zimbabwe, there are reforms that are called upon by the Zimbabwean people to address Zimbabwean cause issues, not to pander to the whims and caprices of people that have their hidden agenda to make sure that they maintain a stranglehold on global economic affairs by ensuring that they scare all African states from undertaking their programs by instituting these sanctions. Sanctions in Zimbabwe, targeted or not targeted, they are real. The perception that they are targeted is neither here nor there. Can you explain, Mr. Chipangura? Who suffers if Tagirei does not bring fuel in Zimbabwe? Do you think that Tagirei will fail to get petrol to put in his cars? Is it that the service stations will run out of fuel? Who suffers if the people that are in government do not have an opportunity to go out and look for resources and engage the international community, since we are now living in a global village? Isn't it are the people of Zimbabwe that are going to suffer if their leadership is not in a position to go and engage with other people in the global village? It is important that we as Zimbabweans, if we are naive on certain issues that are taking place in our own country, the Americans and other people will not take us serious. That's why Zimbabweans, we are calling upon each one of us, if we have differences, let us make sure that we attend to our differences in a manner that ensures that we can prop up the development of our country. Sanctions are real.
Yes, sanctions are real, Mr. Mandaza, and okay. Zimbabwe can thrive. The Zimbabwe economy can thrive under those sanctions. The major sanction Zimbabwe has, it is the limitations the government of Zimbabwe has put on itself and on the people of Zimbabwe. The people of Zimbabwe have no space to invest even in their own country. Even if the corruption which is happening, if the people of Zimbabwe are doing corruption and invest back into Zimbabwe, it was going to be better, it was going to be much better, and the economy of Zimbabwe was going to thrive. Remember, Zimbabwe, before it was called Zimbabwe, it was called Rhodesia. Sanctions which were imposed on Rhodesia were total sanctions. These were imposed by United Nations on Ian Smith when he declared UDI. This is the time that Ian Smith and his government, their economy prospered. Their economy of Zimbabwe, it grows rapidly during that time when it was under sanctions. You know why? Because Ian Smith was able to mitigate these sanctions. He was able to invest back the money into Rhodesia. That's why Ian Smith dies poor without anything, because he cared much for his people. He never took the money outside of the country and invest it outside. So this Ghana that we are talking about is a foreign country of the United States. It's a foreign policy of the United States. There's nothing that we can do about it. We can go to heaven and come back. We can march, even we can walk from South Africa to United States on foot, but they won't budge. They won't change these sanctions. So I do not know why are we wasting resources, wasting money on doing something that we know we are not going to get any result at all. It is a foreign policy. It is the foreign policy of the United States. What is our own foreign policy as Zimbabweans regarding the United States? We want to know what is our Zimbabwean foreign policy regarding the United States or the Western countries so that we can have a strategy, an economic strategy to counter these sanctions. We can thrive. We got enough resources in Zimbabwe to make sure that we can thrive under normal sanctions. But as Zimbabweans, we also deserve what the sanctioneer is the reforms what the sanctioneer is demanding to us as Zimbabwe. We deserve what United States is the reforms they are demanding from us. We deserve those reforms. Do not rig election. Do not continue to abuse people, human rights, the abduction, the torture, and the killing. All those things. These are the demands which they are saying. So if you are saying we are under sanctions, you are wrong. As Zimbabweans, you are not under sanctions. You didn't reply my question. I wanted the link between the latest 2 people to be imposed on sanctions and the sufferings which are happening to the 70 million of people. Maybe I can pose another question, then you can come in. What is the link between the Zimbabwe defense industry and again the suffering of the people, the dilapidating hospitals, roads, infrastructure, schools? What is the link between these and the Zimbabwe defense industry? Because this is another company which is placed under sanction. So if you can give me a link between this country and the sanctions and the suffering of the people, a clear, detailed explanation of the link between Zimbabwe defense industry, because it is a company placed under sanction. Then,
all right, can you allow Mr. Mandaza to respond to that one, Mr. Chipangura? Mr. Ombe wanted to say something, then we'll give it to Mr. Mandaza. You wanted to say something?
Yes, I wanted to respond to him because he posed the question both to me and to Mr. Mandaza. So I wanted to respond to him because, you know, when it comes to this issue of sanctions, I think if you don't know what sanctions are, you'd rather just keep quiet than to thoroughly embarrass yourself with ignorance. Because when you look at such things, like what he's saying, these questions, he does not understand that on Zimbabwe, there are 2 types of sanctions which are imposed on Zimbabwe. There are certain sanctions which are targeted at individuals. Then there is ZIDERA. ZIDERA is not targeting at individual like Tagwire as he's talking about. An individual like Owen Ngube as he's talking about. And at the same time, I want to pose a question to him that when you call these sanctions targeted and you go and target a public institution like Agribank, you go and target a public institution like MMCZ, are you targeting an individual or are you targeting the public? What does a public institution mean? It's the simple meaning of a public institution is that it belongs to the public. And these are the key institutions that are running the state. And these are the institutions that are targeted by these sanctions. So economic sabotage, which comes with these sanctions, if you don't understand it, you will not be able to comprehend these questions that is asking about military and the health care and all that. If you don't understand how these sanctions are actually crafted, I think it's rather just keep quiet than to thoroughly embarrass yourself.
I know there are sanctions. I know exactly what they mean. I know even all those companies that I know. But what I'm saying is there are ways to pass around these sanctions. But there are no space for us as Zimbabweans to pass around because the government has put us on sanctions itself. It has put us as a nation on restrictions. You cannot be allowed to pass around these obstacles which are placed by sanctions. You understand? As early as 2004.
Okay.
I am saying.
All right, Mr. Mandas, I wanted to say something.
Okay. Let me just answer today. What I am saying is their greatest sanction now. Because these sanctions, the targeted sanctions, we know they are imposed upon us by the Americans, Western countries. There's nothing that we can do about it unless we bend to their demands. But what do we do as a nation? Should we continue singing the same song for 20 years? Because these sanctions are going to be there for another 20 years again to come. Now, what should we do? The government of Zimbabwe must open the space for its people to build this economy. The Zimbabwe can thrive under these sanctions. So why the greatest sanctions now is the ones which the government has placed upon itself and the people of Zimbabwe. It does not want to open the space. It wants to monopolize everything, and no one can want to come even to invest in such an environment.
Right.
So how are we going to grow our economy?
Okay, I think you have gotten the question. Mr. Mandaza, what is your response? If I hear you correctly, Mr. Chipangura, you're saying that the government has not allowed the space for everyone to invest, maybe the investment for people that are local. And is that the question that you are saying?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mandaza.
I want to thank Mr. Tongai Chipangura for making it very clear on 3 things. One, that the sanctions are real and they exist. 2, acknowledging that the reforms that they are calling for are reforms that they've been instructed by the Americans to say that we need reforms in Zimbabwe. Then he said, thirdly, I now wanted to correct him on the issue that Zimbabwe has sanctioned its own citizens. I think we must be very clear as we speak right now that it is us as Zimbabweans who have been called upon by the government to make sure that we become masters of our own destiny by investing in our own country. There are many other people who are not Zimbabweans that are going to Zimbabwe seeking for investment opportunities. It is the time for Mr. Chipangura to seek the right channel and if he intends to invest in Zimbabwe. And I can assure him that he will find that Zimbabwe, as we speak, has been listed as among the top 20 countries in the world who have instituted the ease of doing business, which is something that has taken place in the last year or so. And Zimbabwe has created a structure which is known as the Zimbabwe Investment Development Agency, which is now responsible for ensuring that it harnesses all investment in coming into assisting those who would want to invest in Zimbabwe. For somebody then to say that Zimbabweans are restricted investing in Zimbabwe, I think it could be you would want to send a wrong signal to people. And I want to correct that signal. Opportunities are available for Zimbabweans to go and invest in Zimbabwe, in agriculture, in mining, resuscitating the manufacturing sector. As we speak right now, in order to mitigate the effects on challenges of these sanctions, the Zimbabwean government has started to mobilize local resources to stabilize the economy and develop the country. They have started using the local resources to rehabilitate roads, constructing new dams, rebuilding infrastructure which was disturbed by Cyclone Idai, supporting the agriculture and the local industry. They've also started to expedite the mechanization of agriculture. All these issues are being put in place to mitigate the sanctions. It's not that we are saying sanctions should be removed and we sit back and wait for the Americans to remove the sanctions. There is a lot that is taking place, As you have seen of late, there are so many things that the government has achieved in the last 2 years in relation to mitigating the effects of the sanctions that had killed the majority of our people through hunger, unemployment, and so on. And we are beginning to see that the call that the government is making, which is the call that we have also been making, is that Zimbabweans in their diversity, this is an opportunity that as a collective, we should come together and make sure that we pool our resources and invest in our own country. If we have this onerous responsibility of making sure that we take it upon ourselves, like what the president said, let us all put our shoulders to the deck in order to develop our country. For us to go out and say, the Zimbabwean government has said Zimbabweans cannot invest in Zimbabwe, I think we are stretching our thinking and trying to make things quite difficult in our country too much. There are so many opportunities, my brother Tongai. If you are wishing to invest in Zimbabwe, you may be talking to the wrong people. You have been using the wrong people in the wrong channels. The government is open to assist you to make sure that you invest in Zimbabwe today, tomorrow, and any time after that.
All right.
Thank you.
Before I allow, okay, I want to allow Mr. Gambakwe. You said you still had some questions. Before we wrap it up, I want you gentlemen to just get ready. Final closing thoughts of this conversation about sanctions. Is it sanctions or it's corruption? You have want to hear from you, but Mr. Gambakwe first.
Okay, so I think what I want to do today is the 22nd.
Yes.
And I think our guests have not had enough time to ventilate or to explain what they wanted to say. There's so much which I think needs to be said. And I would like to invite them tomorrow so that we continue this discussion, especially Mr. Mandaza and Mr. Pangura. I think, Mr. Bahombe, you have managed to talk about the march, which is going to happen on the 25th. Maybe tomorrow we should continue, because I think Mr. Mandaza has got something that he's explaining, but it needs more time. I'm hearing Mr. Chipangura, what he's saying. I'm seeing an agreement between the two of them. And I think if we give them more time, we are going to see that agreement, because they're all saying basically the same thing to me when I'm listening to them. They are agreeing a lot, but there's just a few things which I think Mr. Mandaza needs to explain, because that question is coming from Zimbabweans. We've got a lot of Zimbabweans who are watching Gambakwe media. We've got 1,217 people who are watching Gambakwe media right now, and they are responding. Unfortunately, I cannot put them on the screen because we're not on the Gambakwe platform. But what I would like us to say is, I think it's important that this issue is being discussed.
Yes,
and
yes.
Mr. Mandaza, I think it's important for you, if possible, tomorrow to come back with Mr. Chipangura again so that we can continue. So that's all I wanted to say. I would have wanted to read the comments, but there are just too many. We can do that tomorrow. And Mr. Rosike, thank you for giving me this opportunity to just say my last piece.
All right. I'll start with you, Mr. Wombe. Can you tell us the final thoughts and what you said people are supposed to come to the march? What are the rules and regulations that they are supposed to adhere to, and what is the meeting point, and who is the final person that they can call if they want to participate in this march?
Okay, the rules is that, number one, because we are still in lockdown level 1, everyone, it's mandatory for everyone who's going to come there to wear a face mask, and also at the same time, for security purposes, you are not allowed to wear a mask that covers the entire face, but you're just allowed to wear a mask that covers this COVID-19 face masks. Then also at the same time, the other rules is that the other rules that are there is that what do you call it, the marshals are supposed to be also wearing the reflectors. So now at the same time, there are no cars that are going to be allowed to be marching with us. So the meeting point is in Pretoria Loftus Stadium. There is a triangle there between Eastwood and Park Street. There is a triangle there. They call it Loftus Triangle. That's we are going to meet there at 9 o'clock. So we urge all Zimbabweans, all South Africans, and all Africans that wants to come and show solidarity with us to come in their numbers, so that they can, so that we can make this event a memorable one. So I think that's it in short.
All right, Mr. Mandaza, your parting shot.
We call upon all Zimbabweans and South Africans and all progressive forces to rally behind this particular march called upon by patriotic Zimbabweans who would want to see the sanctions lifted. I must also end by saying that the president of Zimbabwe, he has been very unambiguous in saying that the fight on the vices of corruption, incompetence, and the lack of seriousness in government officials are issues that are going to be uppermost during this particular time, to make sure that whatever we intend to achieve is achieved for the benefit of the people of Zimbabwe, given that he said it right in 2017 that he would want to be the servant of the people. So he is fighting corruption, and let us therefore assist the government of Zimbabwe under the leadership of the president of Mnangagwa to call for the lifting of the illegal sanctions, which are a declaration of war, which are which have caused untold human rights violations on the majority of the people in Zimbabwe and in the region, including in South Africa, and also which have caused many people to leave their homes and be refugees, economic refugees in a number of countries. It is high time that we as a collective speak with one voice and call upon the Americans and their allies to unconditionally remove these sanctions. If they don't, we as Zimbabweans should take it upon ourselves to make sure that we also put our shoulders to the deck and support the revival of our economy, which is on an upward trajectory as we speak right now.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mandaza. And Mr. Chipangura, what is your final thoughts? I know that tomorrow, you are, if time willing, you are going to have you on Gambakwe. It will be on Mr. Gambakwe's side. What is your final thoughts on this issue of sanctions? Are you still convinced that you don't want to go to the march?
Okay, my final thought for today, I want to say sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe are a foreign policy of the Americans to Zimbabwe. There's nothing that we can do about it. And if we don't realize that now or today, they are going to be there 40 years to come. So there's no need for us as Zimbabweans to waste the resources doing something that we know we are not going to get the results out of it. It's better we take that resources and channel them to something that is valuable to us as Zimbabweans, as our country. Unless we want to bend into the demands of the Americans. That's the only way the sanctions can be removed. And we must come together now than later as Zimbabweans, put all our heads together, not restrict anyone, especially from the government of Zimbabwe. I still maintain that the biggest sanctions is from our government. It must open the space. Open the space. And we can thrive under those sanctions. Our economy can grow heavily even under those sanctions. We will come to a place, to a point whereby we even forget we have sanctions. But only let's take out our own self-sanctions, which we have imposed on each other.
Thank you. Just gonna read a few thoughts here that have been posted here from Anna Madiwa. As long as we play capitalism, we have to accept that sanctions are a tool of those that print the money. That is from Anna Madiwa. I would have read all the comments, but there are so many. Gentlemen, we thank you for coming to the show and for coming on such a short notice. And we expect that people are going to respond to this call to go and march against sanctions. But maybe the final word that I might want to ask is that if, because for the past, this is the second year this has been happening, march against sanctions. If that doesn't happen, what is your final call? This is the question directed to Mr. Awombe. What is your position if this call has not been heeded? What is your position? What is your position? What are you going to ask Zimbabweans to do? Just maybe in 20 seconds.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Rusike. This is a struggle. We cannot expect it to be won overnight. The comrades that started this struggle last year, they did very well. And we are continuing where they left. And we are saying, I think, sorry to just drag you a little bit backwards. We want to raise awareness within our society, especially for people like Mr. Chipangura. Mr. Chipangura, the mistaken views that he has got, these are the views that have been that are emanating from the damage of the sanctions. The sanctions have damaged the psyche of Zimbabweans. So at the moment, Zimbabweans will tell you that these sanctions are a foreign policy for America, and it is only America that can remove them. Yes, we understand that it is a foreign policy for America. But now, at the same time, one thing for sure that Mr. Chipangura must understand is that as long as these sanctions are there, Zimbabwean economy will find it very hard to actually thrive, to actually do well. Because even under the GNU, you heard I think previous Ms. Mandas actually spoke about it. The likes of Atham Tambara, who was the vice prime minister by then, the likes of Tendai Biti, writing to the American administrators that remove this Zidera because it is an impediment that actually disturbs the government to do its business in a normal way. So they've realized how terrible and how difficult it is to run a government that is actually under sanctions. So at the same time, you realize that such voices like the one of Mr. Chipangure, there are so many voices that are in the society like that. So what we are actually that's what we are actually urging our government to do now, from now going forward, is that the government 20 years down the line, it needs to incorporate sanctions into the curriculum, into the education curriculum. Sanctions needs to be actually incorporated into the education curriculum. It's either at O level, you must cover a chapter that covers the sanctions so that you understand how they actually destroy the life of an ordinary man. Maybe if you are also at A level, you must cover maybe a course. At university level, before you graduate, you are supposed to actually cover a course that covers these sanctions so that people can be able to understand how these sanctions actually affect their lives, affect their future. So, because now at the moment, it looks like 20 years down the line, nothing much has been done, especially from the education ministry, to be able to raise awareness about these sanctions, how terrible and how evil they are, especially against the ordinary citizens.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We are completely out of time. Thank you, everyone who came and participated, and everyone that is watching on Gambakwe Media. I really want to thank you for coming to the show. Thank you. We hope that tomorrow we are going to have the same discussion, and we are going to have a bit more time. But once again, I want to say thank you, Mr. Mandaza from ZANU PF, Mr. Tongai Chupangura. Thank you so much, Mr. Brian. Thank you for coming. My friend, Mr. Gambakwe, thank you once again for coming. I really appreciate. We hope to see you tomorrow if time permits, so that we can delve again into this subject. I thank you, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that, Mr. Mapesa and Mr. Gambakwe. Thank you for coming, Mr. Brian. Thank you. So that was the show. Thank you for joining us. If you are new on this channel, please hit the subscribe button and bell notification so that you won't miss out on all our broadcasts that we do on this platform. This has been your boy JC, once again reminding you that Rise Up Africa, the world is waiting for you. I'll see you next time in other broadcasts. It's good night for now.